Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? Hey, welcome in. We're live from headquarters, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on a sunny, hot. We're in the middle of a heat dome. Probably, if you're within earshot of my voice, you're under the heat dome, too. Is it like Trump's Golden Dome? Less pleasant. Much more uncomfortable. It's wicked hot out there. You probably are feeling it too, wherever you happen to be, and I'm glad you're here with us. Hope you're inside and cool on the Salem News Channel today. If you're watching, if you're listening on great radio stations all over the country, like our flagship station, Philadelphia's AM 990 The Answer, where last night, late night, out at the Cigar Republic, we thank the Scipione brothers, Paul, who runs Cigar Republic, which is a fantastic facility in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, just outside of Philadelphia, here in Pennsylvania. It is a tremendous relatively new cigar bar in the last 3 years or so. Beautiful facility, but their parent company is called Atlantic Cigar, and the Scipione family has been in the game of cigars for a very long time, and we became friends with them before we launched this show nationally. We'd been doing some live events with them over the years. Seb Gorka has come to Philadelphia to do these events. Eddie, we had so much fun last night. Can I just say off the top, E.J. Antoni, the new chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, that guy, the jury is in. Not that we had any doubt. E.J.'s relatively new to our show. Jury is in. Smash success. EJ is going to become such a star, we're probably not going to be able to book him soon. You understand that, don't you?
That's what's going to happen, yeah. Just laying some really, really good truth bombs last night. Unbelievable.
I told him, you're going to be such a star, you will literally not accept our call someday. You're booked everywhere else. No, he's a sweet guy. He happens to come from the Philadelphia area. Yeah, he and his family, so he was willing to come visit. We had... we kept this like a really intimate event, and I loved that we did it this way, and I think in the future we may just do this. We kept this limited to like 50 folks, so we charged a VIP premium ticket, that's true, but what I heard was people really preferred that because it gave everybody some time to ask their questions and gave some time with EJ, and we had a fabulous discussion on the economy and where EJ thinks we're going economically. And by the way, it was not all rose-colored glasses for you people that accuse us of being rah-rah cheerleaders, right, Fast Eddie? It wasn't that EJ withheld his fire if he thought there was some policy stuff going on with the Trump administration that wasn't necessarily positive, right?
No, he didn't, Chris. I remember one moment of note is when you asked him specifically about tariffs, he paused before he responded, and I'm like, oh boy.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and I will press him on that on this show later, and I'm going to remember that and tuck it away as we talk about the big, beautiful bill, and Senator Tommy Tubberville is coming up on the show. It was notable because he said, in his view, this was E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation, he said, in his view, all of this chatter about tariffs has really not had any kind of effect, and furthermore, anything that actually does get negotiated with China or others, he says he doesn't really see the impact. He's not really impressed that anything changes. I mean, and I don't want to mischaracterize what he said, but I think he said, Ed, that all this talk and all this screeching and all this panic about tariffs for naught, because it's really not anything. He says it's basically a reset of where we are, is more or less what he said. Did he not?
He did. I mean, he did give Trump credit for having the gall to do it because he said past presidents have looked at this and said, this would be too hard to do right now. But yes, overall, the long-term effects, nothing really happening there.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, he wasn't like trying to dump on the tariff plans or policies. He just said that he doesn't see that there's anything like radical or aggressive that's going to fundamentally change the economy for the good or for the bad. He said we cannot grow our way out of this economy. That was also critically important. He said all the tax cuts in the world in this big, beautiful bill are not going to grow us out of the trouble that we're in, $37 trillion in debt. We're in a mess, and the only way we're going to get out of this mess is if we actually have meaningful spending cuts, which, as we know, this bill really does not do. I mean, it starts to kind of chip away at it. Rescissions are kind of chipping away at it. But he said we have to have a real discussion about real, meaningful cuts. It has to happen. We talked about the oil markets and the fact that the stock market yesterday closed like record high for the day. Oil prices continue to drop. Do you know that oil prices right now, and I brought this up with him, I saw this stat before we went into the evening, roughly $77 a barrel is where oil sat when Donald Trump was inaugurated. And as of yesterday, when markets closed, $64 a barrel. That's after the strike on Iran, where everybody told us that oil was going to go through the roof and the economy was going to go bonkers. The market sure didn't seem to think so. And so it was just a tremendous night. I want to thank everyone who came out. It continues to remind me every time we're able to get out and say hello, just how special and how smart this audience is. Sincerely, I can't wait to travel around the country and get to meet some other folks. Our next stop, incidentally, I should tell you while I'm thinking about it, if you are in or around the San Antonio area, I would love to meet you. I have not been to San Antonio ever. Never visited it. I think I'm probably inclined to go visit not in July because everybody says go see the Riverwalk, and I say I would love to, but it's like the surface of the sun down there right now, I imagine. I mean, if this is a heat dome in Philadelphia, I don't want to know what heat dome feels like in Texas, but I think I'm about to find out. July 19th, we're going to be in the San Antonio area with 9:30 a.m. The Answer for their Red, White, and Q, their Texas Pride barbecue event. If you want to go through next week, the 4th of July, they're giving you $10 off for tickets. So if you are anywhere near the San Antonio area, we had people that drove down from New York last night, as I suspected we would have. So if you're willing to hop in the car and drive, one guy's got a room for the night from New York, Fast Eddie, to stay for our cigar evening.
Chris, somebody came in from Detroit last night. Did you?
Are you serious? I didn't meet the. Really?
Yes. I'm trying everybody's name. I met a lot of people, but yes, somebody came in from Detroit last night.
Wow.
Well,
I'm sorry I didn't. What an honor. I did not know that trip was made. Well, okay, if you are willing to make your trip to San Antonio for 9:30 a.m., The Answer's Red, White, and Q, I'd love to shake your hand there. That's our next chance to meet up together. And again, it's going to be live music and barbecue, a cash bar, and I think they're doing a classic car show and all that stuff. 9:30 a.m., theanswer.com. We're going on a Goodwill tour, and we still have more coming, I should tell you. We've got some more in the hopper. I think our next stop is heading to Ron DeSantis' Florida, if memory serves. I don't have all the particulars on that yet. I might be wrong on that. Maybe there's something before that. But anyway, I'll tell you, we're going to take them in order, all right? One stop at a time. So up next, July 19th, Red, White, and Q, 9:30 a.m., theanswer.com, 9:30 a.m., theanswer.com. All right, so yesterday, Scott Bessent rolls out after he has lunch with the senators on Capitol Hill, and he says, I'm feeling pretty good. I think this is going to get done. And he reminds everybody where we are and how special this time in history is. And I think some big gifts are coming from this president by the 4th of July in 2643 to kick it off here, fellas.
Had a very successful lunch meeting with the senators. I think that we are on track for hopefully for a vote this Friday for July 4th for the tax bill. President is doing peace deals, tax deals, trade deals, so he's done a peace deal. I think we'd have the tax deal done by July 4th, and then we can finish with the trade deals.
I love that. Peace deals, tax deals, trade deals. This president is delivering on them all. He got a little ticked off yesterday. I don't know if you saw that right after we wrapped up the show, or maybe it was going on during the show. I'm not entirely sure, but here's the way it went down as I understand it. As we were in the middle of the show, we know that Israel did some strikes after the ceasefire was technically on, which ended up killing a family of 4 in Israel. And then we know Israel said, oh, no, you don't. And apparently they launched what was to be a payload of bombs, huge payload of bombs, to rain down on Iran in response. And this was all unfolding as Trump is getting ready to leave the White House and head to the NATO summit. And Trump was asked by the press on his way to the helicopter to head to the NATO summit about Israel about to respond. Trump apparently got on the phone, stopped them, but he was ticked. 2632, Trump dropped a bomb, or to himself.
That Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you understand that? He turned around and he got on the helicopter. They don't know. That's already turning into a meme. They don't know what the... I saw a Philadelphia Eagles post, a fan site called Crossing Broad in Philadelphia that said that's every Philadelphia Eagles fan when the Eagles don't score in the first drive of the new season. They don't know what the F they're doing. You're going to hear that a lot. Trump cheered up by the time he landed in the Netherlands and congratulated Israel for their restraint. He talked them off the ledge. They turned that plane around and did not drop those bombs. Quick break, more in a minute on the Stigall Show. Yeah, yesterday, I haven't talked much about it because, quite frankly, what are we going to do about it? These are one of those things that I don't lose sleep over and I don't spend a lot of time on because ain't nobody in New York City, quite frankly, who's participating in yesterday's primaries listening to this show. So I wish that they were, but I've not lost a lot of sleep on how Democrats in New York behave. However, Stephen Miller makes a great point. This is one of the president's aide-de-camps, you know, the great Stephen Miller. He posted this on X, and I thought it so true about this race in New York. Incidentally, this guy called, I'm going to call him Mad Manny. I know that's not how you say it, but it's Mad Manny. He is a bat crap crazy lunatic socialist commie. I mean, bonkers. I also think he's had the hair implants. You know, as a bald guy, I study guys' hairlines. That looks like an artificial hairline, Fast Eddie.
Oh.
I think. I could be wrong on that. I'll have to study it more closely. But he looks like he's one of those hair club guys.
Makes sense. No, that makes total sense. He has the money.
Zorhan Mad Manny. He beat Cuomo. You know, it does help if you don't lock old people away and kill others in quarantine. That hurts your chances, I think, to come around and be mayor after you've run for governor and killed a bunch of old people. You know? I think once you've killed a bunch of elderly, it's hard to come back from that. But Anyway, Zohan Madmani is the Democrat winner. And Stephen Miller says it this way. The commentary about the Democrats nominating this anarchist socialist for mayor omits one point. Unchecked migration fundamentally remade the New York City electorate. And that is so critically important to understand. You know that New York City allows illegals to vote, right? Do you hear me? If you're not sufficiently alarmed yet, let me say it again so it really soaks in. New York City allows anyone and everyone, including illegals, to vote. And when you do that, you allow mass illegal migration, and then you allow everyone who's anyone to vote. Guess what you get? An anarchist socialist mayor of the city. And coming to a theater near you, city council, school board, state house, governor, United States Senator, United States House of Representatives. This is the Democrat playbook. New York, L.A., Chicago, Philadelphia, the big cities are always the trial balloons. They're always the laboratory. And their lab experiment has come to life. The Frankenstein's electoral monster of the Democrat Party just came to life. It's alive. It's alive. Ha, 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 ha. Complete with lightning strikes and thunderclaps. This is what you get when illegals are allowed to vote. And this is why Democrats have let millions and millions of illegals pour into the country, because step two is allowing them to vote. And as Stephen Miller points out, this is what you get. It fundamentally remakes an electorate, as it has in New York City. Democrats change politics by changing voters. That's how you turn a city that once defined U.S. dominance into what it is now. Ron DeSantis agrees. In fact, he believes that now you're going to see a bumper crop of new recruits to the state of Florida in 2647. Take a listen.
If this socialist mayor candidate wins in New York City, you're going to see real estate values skyrocket even more in Palm Beach, because people are going to get out of that city. As bad as de Blasio was, this guy is like going to be way, way worse. He doesn't think that you should have law enforcement in dangerous parts of the city, that you should send in social workers. See how that works out for you. It ain't going to work out well. So, they've made a lot of really dumb decisions, and we've benefited from it.
Yeah. I don't know what legal, reputable business is going to be left. Wall Street should pack its things and head south quickly. All of Wall Street, sincerely. A Madmani is perhaps going to govern the city of New York soon. This is Stigall. We started the show this morning talking about the big, beautiful bill. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said Trump's going to deliver peace. Trump's going to deliver on tariffs. Trump's going to deliver on these tax cuts. It could be a huge 4th of July, but of course it requires the Senate to get it done. Saturday, technically, is when they're all supposed to go home for recess. Trump has already said, he's warning, there will be no vacation until this bill is done. This from the Wall Street Journal. President Trump urging Republicans to get their one big, beautiful bill to his desk by the 4th of July. It's just a week from Friday. When Bessent said that, I don't know if he meant this Friday. We asked EJ last night at our cigar event here in Philadelphia, does he think the big, beautiful bill is going to happen by Friday? He says he thinks that's very, very optimistic. He doesn't believe that's going to be a possibility. I don't know. There's been some developments with a parliamentarian that are, I'll put it this way, concerning. But I'm going to wait until we talk to Senator Tubberville today, who's scheduled to come on the show to confirm or deny what we're hearing about this. And that is a Democrat-appointed Senate parliamentarian, a lady that Harry Reid appointed. All right, so the worst of the worst. She's apparently gotten a hold of this bill and told these senators, you're not going to be able to strict up or down simple majority vote this thing. You're going to need that 60-vote threshold because there's stuff in here procedurally that can't go forward without a 60-vote approval. And I'll go through some of it here shortly. But anyway, Trump says none of you guys are leaving until you get this thing done. Trump urging Republicans to get it done and to his desk by a week from Friday. Lawmakers still face a series of hurdles and headaches on issues ranging from artificial intelligence to deficit spending to rural hospitals. Senate leaders revising their version in advance of potential votes this week, searching for a mix that can garner a majority of the chamber, divided 53-47. Anything that gets through the Senate must then pass the House, which is divided as well. Any subsequent House changes would require another Senate vote, so you understand how this goes. This is how tenuous this is. The Senate changes this, and they're going to. It's got to go back to the House, and that same cadre of House people that was very, very hard to get together and only passed by a vote, they've all got to come back and do it again. Now, keep in mind, that's since we started having the very public feud with some House members over bombing Iran. And you know how petulant some of these people can be, I'm sorry to say. It becomes very petty, and they all like to score points, and they all like to be standout stars and social media stars. And I hope I'm wrong. I want to have faith that the House Republicans as well as Senate Republicans all understand how critically important it is this big, beautiful bill pass, if for no other reason than avoiding the largest tax hikes on all Americans that we've ever seen. It would be an unmitigated disaster if it doesn't pass. So that's the procedure, and it's enough to give you heartburn when you think about it. So the Senate's going to vote on this thing maybe by the end of the week. If it gets through the Senate by the end of the week, then it's got to go back to the House over the weekend next week. And we're trying to get this thing done by Friday, 4th of July. So if I'm to predict, I think EJ may be right. Even if this does get out of the Senate successfully by week's end, then it's got to go back over to Johnson and the House to sign off on what the Senate did. Is it likely the House just swallows whatever the Senate does without concessions? And if the House then changes it again, then guess what? Got to go back over to the Senate for them to say, okay, House, we're fine with what you did. Every time they monkey with this in any way, the other chamber has got to sign off on it. And once they both agree we're not changing it anymore, then it goes to the president's desk for signature. So we could well be looking at a whole nother week of this, but 4th of July is this deadline. Deadlines are important. You know, this ticking clock of the 4th of July that Donald Trump set some time ago, that Mike Johnson set and Thune set. It's always important to have this timeline. Now, it's artificial. There's nothing that says any of these people have to go home by the 4th of July, but if there's one thing we all know members of Congress love more than anything else, it's not working. So if there's a way for all of them to get home, it's like, well, I was about to I got to be careful. I tick off teachers every time I reference that. Summer vacation for teachers. I know. My mother was a school teacher for 30 years. That always ticked her off. Anyway, the Congress people would love to get out of there for recess and go home and do whatever they please. Trump is not going to let these guys go until they get this done. So if this thing goes on even beyond the 4th of July, and it's highly possible it could, this is going to start eating into their recess time, heaven forbid. Can't have that. So they're all motivated to get the hell out of Dodge, and they may get it done. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's in this thing on the Senate side, and the Senate parliamentarian who's gotten a hold of it and said, oh, no, you can't keep this in here. From the New York Times, and they're ecstatic about this, by the way, a Harry Reid appointee. The parliamentarian gotten a hold of this bill and says, nope. This, in my mind, as I read this yesterday, it reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen the newest it's kind of historical fiction on the beginning of Saturday Night Live back in the 70s when Lorne Michaels went to the network and they were trying to launch Saturday Night Live with Aykroyd and Belushi and Chevy Chase and Jane Curtin and Gilda Radner and all of them. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it to you. It features prominently a network censor in the film, and they're trying to get all these scripts approved for live broadcast. And there's this prude network censor who's in the room at all times looking over the scripts, trying to understand what these writers have written. And she's very persnickety, and she feels all-powerful, and she says, oh, no, this will not air on NBC. Oh, no, you're not going to use that term on NBC. Oh, that's got to go. And there's this tension throughout the film about the writers trying to get their comedy on air versus the censor hired by NBC to tell them, nope, that's not going to pass. Nope, that's not going to pass. That's how I feel this is going down with this partisan parliamentarian, except this isn't about content. This is about partisan politics. She is an activist Democrat, undoubtedly. This woman's name is Elizabeth McDonough. And again, the late Harry Reid, the guy who famously said, yeah, I lied about Mitt Romney not paying his taxes. He didn't win, did he? Peace be upon him. Remember that saint, Harry Reid? Yeah. He's the guy that appointed Elizabeth McDonough to be the Senate parliamentarian. Now, here's something else I know about this, and I'm going to ask Tommy Tubberville about it a little later. I think this is right. I want to make sure I'm right on this, so I'm going to ask him for clarification. My understanding is John Thune, as the guy who now runs the Senate, could, as well as J.D. Vance, who is, yes, vice president, but he's also president of the Senate. My understanding is they can both fire this parliamentarian and appoint who they'd like in their place. I think I'm right on that. I think they could do it swiftly. It may require confirmation, so maybe the process is too long. I heard some calls yesterday for Thune or Vance to move on this woman, fire her, and replace her toot sweet. I think if they do that, that is going to extend this thing out. I don't know what it takes, but I have a feeling it's not that fast. I don't think Thune can fire her today and appoint somebody this afternoon, and they rubber stamp this bill as is and it pass. I think not. But I'll ask a little later. Meanwhile, Elizabeth McDonough, the Harry Reid appointee, got a hold of this bill. And isn't it interesting how all of a sudden the news has surfaced that she's gone through it and said, oh, no, you can't have this in there. You can't have this in there. That's not going to pass because it's got to meet with the Byrd rule, which is a Senate. This is all procedure. It bores me to tears. Again, I hate even talking about it because I don't know it and I don't care. You don't either. Nobody does. Every time I talk parliamentary procedure in Congress, people say, why the hell don't we just pass the thing? Everybody knows it's common sense. And I say parliamentary procedure, and then people get angry. I don't know. They're not my rules. It's the way these things work. But there are certain components of this bill the parliamentarian says needs 60 votes to pass versus this 50-vote threshold in what's called reconciliation. And this parliamentarian is saying there's some things that do not qualify as reconciliation. They must be standalone appointed or approved by the Senate. And here's the list of them, just briefly. The rejected provisions: food benefits, SNAP state matching funds, SNAP eligibility for certain immigrants. Can you imagine? Federal food stamps, basically. They want to put in this bill, understandably the Republicans, limits on illegals' access to your taxpayer-subsidized food stamps. And the Senate parliamentarian says, oh, no, you're going to need 60 votes to do that. Immigration, funding for states to conduct border security and immigration enforcement. So this parliamentarian is saying that you can't put that in there without 60 votes. Grants for state and local law enforcement. So, again, reforming food stamps, reforming the way we tackle illegal immigration. Energy. They put a repeal of green energy and emissions reductions in this bill. The Senate parliamentarian says, can't do that. Banking regulations. How about this? They put in this bill a reduction in pay for Federal Reserve employees. The parliamentarian came along and said, nope, can't do that. Elimination of the Office of Financial Research funding. Elimination of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. Nope, can't do that. Federal workers in government. This is another component. The Senate parliamentarian said, nope, can't put that in there. Limits agency rulemaking. Retirement contributions and worker protections for government workers, mind you. So Republicans are trying to reform the way federal employees who are paid for by your tax dollars, they're trying to reform this, and the Senate parliamentarian has come along and said, nope, can't touch it. Not without 60 votes. Can't do it. Defense spending. Coast Guard station repair. NASA space vehicle repair. So the Republicans have tried to take the biggest bite of the apple they can on reforms, and this parliamentarian's come along and said, nope, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. So Thune's trying to figure out a way around this lady. We'll see. It's the Stigall Show. President Trump, before boarding his helicopter for the NATO summit yesterday, addressing this notion, you've probably heard this, CNN, some phony CNN reporter, in fact, Brit Hume over at Fox, interestingly, posted this on social media yesterday on X, and I thought this was worthwhile. The guy who's out there chirping about the strikes in Iran didn't actually take out the nuclear facilities. You're probably hearing that. You've probably heard that. Britt Hume points out, bear in mind that the CNN correspondent who broadcast this story also swallowed the infamous Steele dossier, hook, line, and sinker. And this really, I will say, it was interesting. I actually caught a little of this yesterday before our event. I think it was Peter Doocy at Fox who first got wind of this CNN report that the strikes in Iran didn't actually take out the sites or didn't do what they said it was going to do. And apparently within a minute, he said quickly, the White House jumped on this, Pete Hegseth jumped on this. They didn't waste any time. They did not want this story to get any oxygen whatsoever out of Washington. I know Steve Witkoff, the envoy to the Middle East for Donald Trump, who's been in the middle of all of this stuff. He was on, I think, with Laura last night, and he was stridently, adamantly, not only defending these strikes, but saying they worked. And Trump, again, Trump not in a great mood when he was boarding the plane for NATO yesterday. This is right before or right after. I think it was right before, because his final word was, Iran and Israel don't know what the F they're doing. And then he turned around and got on the helicopter. So just before that, now, again, he's already pretty agitated. And he had been hearing these early reports from places like CNN that the strikes on Iran. And wouldn't they love that? That's what they want. They would love nothing more than to be able to tell the American people that these strikes were not a success. There's been a member of Congress that's already nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And that's the last thing anybody in mainstream media can have. Legacy media cannot abide this. They can't have Trump having this kind of success. I mean, my entire life, really, I think I was 2 since this regime currently in place in Iran took over that country. So for the entirety of my life, this theocracy has run Iran and oppressed these people. So the entirety of my life, well before I even knew what I was talking about or paying attention to it, this oppressive regime who hates the West, we're the great Satan, Israel the little Satan, they've pledged they're going to nuke up. And for 40 years, president after president after president after president has just allowed it and in many cases aided it, with pallets of cash in Obama's case. Trump has finally put an end to this thing. And legacy media knows it. The left knows it, which is why they're all screaming. Did you see some Democrats yesterday tried to impeach Trump over it? Oh, yeah, the brilliant Jasmine Crockett. That's right. Did you see this? The great constitutional scholar Jasmine Crockett was apparently speaking. I don't know if it was a fundraiser or what it was exactly. But yesterday, I posted this on social media as well. Where did that go? There it is, 2635. Listen to the constitutional scholar Jasmine Crockett about airstrikes on Iran and her role in it.
Let me tell you, just dropping those few bombs in one day, that was the beginning of what is going to be a very long bill for us as they talk about being efficient. There was nothing efficient about doing it. And maybe if there was some consultation, maybe with those that say have constitutional authority, since we care about the Constitution, then maybe we could have saved the American people not only money, but the lives that are now at risk as we have to put out.
All right, whatever, blah, blah, blah. She was also, that's not the clip, but she was also at a fundraiser where she dropped the F-bomb and said that she gets to vote. She gets to vote. I posted this yesterday. You can go see it on my social media profiles if you'd like. Harry Enton, though, says overwhelmingly the American voter, specifically Republicans, 2650, if you please.
You know, I think there's this idea, okay, maybe the MAGA base wouldn't necessarily like this. Look, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. That's what I think is so important to note. GOP on the U.S. airstrikes in Iran, 76% in the average of the 2 polls approve, compared to just 18% who disapprove. Now, I will note that is a bit higher than Donald Trump's.
Yeah, so overwhelming. Any doubt that there was a majority support for Trump in terms of his base, it's there. Harry Enton at CNN had to acknowledge it. But here's Trump addressing this not successful strike, 2633, a little of it yesterday.
And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSD.
And so is MSNBC. Yeah, he was fit to be tied. Quick break. Back in a minute.
Hey, everybody talking about the Maha movement, Make America Healthy Again. Balance of Nature says, welcome to the party. They've been working hard, producing a vibrant nutritional supplement second to none for many, many years before it became fashionable. So many other people use chemicals and additives for their supplements, but Balance of Nature is made solely from whole food ingredients. And while other methods sacrifice nutritional quality for the sake of profits and volume balance of nature, they use an advanced cold process, a vacuum cold process. It includes freeze drying their fruits and vegetables into a fine powder, and so that allows them to retain as much nutritional value as possible. And they don't cut corners, for volume or other things, as maybe some other supplements do. Balance of Nature packs a real nutritional punch, and that's the whole reason to take Balance of Nature. Get the most nutrition for the sake of your good health. And if you use my name, Chris, as your promo code right now, you'll save 35% off your order, and they're even going to ship it to you for free. Plus, a money-back guarantee if you're not happy. Call them, 800-2468-751. Use the discount code Chris. Once again, don't forget the discount code Chris for that big 35% off savings plus free shipping. Order online, balanceofnature.com.
Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year. And our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. They have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harump Society. I am so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do. And we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back, and Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com, type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. Hey, by the way, I looked this up during the break, folks. Glad to have you in. If you're just joining us here on the Stigall Show, thanks a lot for watching on the Salem News Channel or listening on great radio stations all over the country. Thrilled to have you along today. Get the Salem News Channel app so you can take it along. If you were with me earlier, I was asking about this Senate parliamentarian business. It turns out, according to what I found, Thune can just replace this lady. It doesn't require a formal vote. He can literally fire her and replace her today. So should he? That's going to be a question I'm going to ask a little later, because she's the sticky wicket now trying to keep this big, beautiful bill from passing through the Senate, and that's critically important. So should we see them move on the Senate parliamentarian appointed by Harry Reid and replace her? Could. Technically can, according to the rulemaking, so we'll stay on top of it. We always try to bring you the very, very smartest, very, very best guest and analysis we can find out there, and this guest is certainly no exception. Thrilled to make the acquaintance of Shahin Gobodi, who is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance. He's a spokesman for the Paris-based People's Mojahedin Organization of Iran. Mr. Gobodi, thank you so much for your time this morning, sir. Welcome in.
I'm glad to be on your show, Chris, and I hope you have had a good day, and you will have a good days for a long time to come, and all your viewers and listeners, wherever they are.
Thank you so much, sir. We are feeling very, very good and confident about the events over the weekend and this week. What is your assessment? These are things I guess for our audience that's not familiar with you, maybe tell them a little about your background and your perspective, and as you watch what's been unfolding in Iran, how you see it.
Well, basically, I come from the National Council of Resistance of Iran, Chris, which is a coalition of Iranian opposition movements, which are both anti-Shah, the former dictator in Iran, and the current theocracy, looking forward to establish a democratic republic in Iran. And it has a president-elect in a woman, Madam Mariam Rajavi, who has articulated a 10-point plan for the future of Iran, which calls for separation of government and religion, for a non-nuclear Iran, a total gender equality, and all the freedoms, and as well as mutual, amicable, amiable relationship with the rest of the world, and abolition of death penalty. So we are striving to establish a new Iran, an Iran which would be in peace and coexistence with the rest of the world. And I think you will find it interesting that there's a vast network of operatives inside Iran called resistance units, which are affiliated to our main member constituent called the People's Mojahedin Organization of Iran. And their function is to battle the IRGC, the regime's repressive forces, to set the stage for the next uprising, which looms on the horizon, because we believe the change should come from bottom up inside Iran. To bring about a change by the Iranians, for the Iranians, and we think this is very closer than ever.
Mr. Gobodi, are you Iranian yourself?
Of course. I was born in Tehran.
Okay.
I grew up in Tehran.
The reason I ask, and I just wanted to know your perspective, so you having a background and a history there and hailing from there, is it true what we Americans hear, that the vast majority of Iranian citizens are, in fact, moderates who do not like living under this theocracy? Is that accurate?
100%. 100%. You see, and let's put the facts where they belong. In the last 7.5 years, to be exact, since December 2017, there has been 5 major nationwide uprisings in Iran alone. 5. And this is despite very heavy-handed crackdown. Just in the last round of uprisings, a lot of your viewers might remember in September 2022, which went well into the early 2023, 750 protesters were killed, 90,000 of them were arrested while they were protesting in all 31 provinces in 300 cities and towns throughout the country, in which the resistance units of the MEK, the resistance movement, played a key role. So I think that speaks volumes about where the sentiment of the Iranian people are. As I said, one of the key chants that they kept chanting was, down with oppressor, be it the Shah, the former dictator, or the supreme leader, the current dictator. So they want to reject the dictatorship in any shape and form, and they're looking forward to establish a democratic republic. And let's put one thing to rest once and for all. The notion that they are enemies of America and things like this, they're all conjured up by the regime. One of the chants of the Iranian people are having in this week is, our enemies here, they lied to us, that's America. So let's put this to rest once and for all. Iranian people, like any other good people in this church, want democracy, freedom.
Mr. Gobodi, what we know is these strikes and many of the leadership that were taken out is directly correlated with this resistance movement, posing as Iranian sympathizers and even inside the government, right, who then were secretly spies for Israel, the United States, and helping them guide these strikes, as I understand it. Here's my question for you. The movement of the resistance, which you say is most of the people, I think what I don't have an appreciation for is being so terrified of the police state that is Iran. Is that it? That these people are so many of them are afraid of what would happen to them? The threat is so great if they speak up and drive an overthrow of this theocracy? Well, actually, to some respect, your observation is correct, but if I may add something to it, the regime obviously rules by pure terror. If I may put it in perspective, in the last 40 years, there has been 120,000 executions of the citizens who speak for freedom and democracy. 120,000? May I just, that's stunning. There have been 120,000 executions just because people have said we want out from under this leadership. Definitely. And, you know, we have documented all of this. 90% of them belong to our resistance movement. And the youngest we documented was a 13-year-old teenage girl whose only crime was to sell the newspaper of the resistance. And the oldest was 72-year-old grandmother, and all in between. And what's important is that this is nationwide throughout the country. Yet, despite this crackdown, as I said, the resistance units are growing. In the last year alone, there have been 3,000 acts of going, burning the big pictures of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, whatever symbolizes the regime. Their statue, even sometimes burning the centers of the paramilitary Basij who represses the people. So yes, the regime has resorted to absolute terror to keep the lid on the situation, but they are simply losing the battle with the Iranian people. Shahin Gobodi is with us. He is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance in Iran. There's a great debate, as you know, in the United States about what's known as, quote, regime change wars and whether the United States needs to be involved in a regime change in Iran. Many Trump voters say, no, that's not our place. I don't know your point of view, but it does seem to me the best change of course in a country is when it's driven first by its own citizens, not by force from outside. Would you agree with that? I think you probably feel that way.
You read my mind completely. You see, we have always maintained that regime change by the Iranian people and the resistance is a necessity to put an end to the Iran crisis. This regime will never give up its drive to acquire nuclear weapons. It will never give up supporting terrorists. It will never give up repressing Iranian people. These are all in the DNA of this regime. Having said this, for the last 20-some years, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, the woman the resistance has elected to be its president-elect, has said time and again, as recent as literally last Wednesday at the European Parliament, that the task of bringing about that change from bottom up is to the Iranian people and their organized resistance solely. This is our mission. This is our commitment. But at the same time, we do not appreciate appeasing the mullahs, but at the same time, we are not calling for, a foreign war. We think there's a third option, as I said, changed by the Iranian people.
Would it have been easier, Mr. Gobodi, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm just curious, would it have been easier for the Iranian resistance if these airstrikes had just taken out Khomeini as well? I mean, Trump said on Truth Social, we know where you are, but we're not going to take you out. Would it have been preferred by the resistance that had just happened?
Well, that's a hypothetical question, but let's deal with the facts on the ground. The point I was about to make was that we do not seek boots on the ground. I think that's very important for your viewers and listeners. We are not advocating for boots on the grounds. We are not even asking for money from the United States or from any other government to that effect. We are not even asking for weapons. You might find it very unique, but that's what we really believe. And we have said time and again, Madame Rajavi testified before the U.S. Congress on February online because she's based in Paris. And she said this very, very clearly that, we do not seek boots on the ground. We do not seek weapons. We do not seek money. All we want is a good policy that recognizes the rights of the Iranian people and the resistance to bring about a regime change by themselves, to be on our side.
May I ask you just quickly, Mr. Gobodi, because I'm short on time with about 30 seconds. I'm sorry to rush this, but I do want to know, just for American viewers and listeners, what is the sentiment amongst most Iranians toward the West and Israel?
Well, Iranians want to be in peace with everyone in the world. They want prosperity. As I said, one of the 10-point plans of Madame Rajavi is to live in peace and coexistence with the rest of the world. We have no enmity towards any other country. Look, there's only one enemy for the Iranians, the regime and the regime only. And that's what we are striving. And I want the people who are listening to your program or watching it to be on our side. The message is there is a viable democratic alternative in Iran. It has been ignored for too long. It has not been heard. It's about time to change the paradigm and bring it to the equation. The situation in Iran is not binary. You don't either go to war or to appease the mullahs. There's a third option, and that's the message.
Shahin Gobodi, I would love to have you back. Just brilliant analysis. Thank you, sir, for your time this morning. More in a minute on the
Thank
Stigall
you, and
Show.
have a nice day.
Interesting this morning, we're monitoring the events over at the NATO summit. President Trump is there. He's slated to speak this morning, maybe before this show concludes. If he does, we intend to join it. The Secretary General of NATO has apparently been communicating with Trump. President Trump posted some of his comments back and forth on text with the Secretary General yesterday, basically commending him for the strikes on Iran. I think what Trump was doing here, and it's classic Trump. Trump is trying to bring all of this patty cake crap from global leaders to the fore. He's sick and tired of global leaders saying, hey, buddy, great job, we're with you, in private, and then publicly they go give some Diplo garbage speak, pretending like they really aren't going to get involved and they really don't, it's like the game is up. Trump wants everybody's cards on the table. He wants everybody to be honest about what they think and where they stand, pony up the cash if they want help with defense, pony up the cash to help us defend off the evildoers around the globe, but also be candid about your own motives and objectives. No longer can you, and you know people like this. I work with people like this who say, hey, can you believe the boss? You believe the boss is asking us to do X, Y, Z? And you say, yeah, that sucks. You know what you ought to do? You ought to go in there and you ought to tell the boss off right now. You ought to tell him you're not going to stand for this. That's what you ought to do. And you look at your colleague and say, well, why don't you do it? Well, I mean, because you're the talker around here, Stigall. Go in there and you tell him you're not going to tolerate XYZ anymore. And I got your back, buddy. I'll be right there behind you. You know people like that? You ever met anybody like that? I have. I know people exactly like this. And that's most of the globe, if I'm to be completely honest with you. They all tell Trump in private over text, great job on Iran. And then publicly they go out there and say, well, we don't, we're really not going to get involved. And Trump is a bloviator and we're. So Trump's just, I love this actually. Trump's, and the press was so ticked at him about this. Legacy media they're so offended. Trump is taking screenshots of his texts from global leaders and just posting them on social media. So he's kind of outed this Secretary General, this guy that runs NATO. And this morning, lo and behold, you know what's happened? He says this publicly, and I'm reading, quote, this is this morning from the NATO summit, the Secretary General, direct quote, for too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment, and that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald. He spoke these words out loud, folks. I'd play the clip for you, but it literally just happened at the NATO summit. Maybe we'll get it a little later here. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. We will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies. Holy crap, folks. This is huge. Trump has smoked out the Secretary General of NATO to publicly, affectionately love up to him and say, you're right, for too long, you guys have been carrying the burden. That ends. We're all going to pony up the cash. No more are you going to have to carry the lion's share of the responsibility for the defense of the rest of us. That's the Secretary General of NATO. Publicly this morning. Do you understand what we're watching? We are living a history that in my literal lifetime, 48 years I've been alive, and for the better part of them, the Iranian regime has enriched nukes and pledged destruction and death. The United States has carried the lion's share of the defense of not just ourselves, but most of Europe and around the world. Pennies on the dollar, effectively, is what other nations are paying, if anything at all. And Trump has demanded a change in all of it, and he's getting it. This is, in 1 week, as Scott Bessent said, he's winning on tax cuts, he's winning on tariffs, he's securing the border, he's securing peace in the Middle East, he's getting other nations to pay their fair share, and he's done it all in a week. And he'll probably get in a round of golf this weekend. This is the Stigall Show. I want to say hi again last night to all of our great friends in Philadelphia and the surrounding area. We had a guy, Fast Eddie just told me, and I'm so sorry I didn't know this, somebody joined us from Detroit last night at our big cigar event in Philadelphia. We had so much fun. E.J. Antoni, one of our great economists, he's the chief economist of the Heritage Foundation, showed up. It was a very limited event, a VIP event for everybody. One of our attendees created this beautiful, what do you call it? When you make now I can't think of the term. The 3D printer, that's what I'm thinking of. He made a 3D printer light of the Harumph Society and Trump pumping his fist in the air, fight, fight, fight. Did you see that, Fast Eddie? It was so cool. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I'm putting some photos up of it now.
That was fantastic. I was actually going to snatch that from me for my studio, man. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? I may donate it to you for the studio because I told him, I said, we need to get proper placement of this thing. So I'm going to give that to you. It was a beautiful. Thank you for the gift. But I got to tell you, these folks were some of the kindest, and the conversation was the smartest one we've ever had. Do you know how many times I heard people say, this is the smartest live event I've ever attended? And not because of me, of course, although I added. But E.J. Antoni he was brilliant. And we had a really extended conversation about the economy. We talked about energy and the economy. So thank you so much to everyone who came out to Conshohocken and the Scipiani brothers, great hosts at Atlantic Cigar. We are so grateful for their friendship and their sponsorship. And it felt like revisiting some family last night, reconnecting with our home base, our flagship station of Philadelphia's AM 990, The Answer. Daniel Turner, speaking of energy, founder and executive director of Power the Future, powerthefuture.com. Daniel Turner, PTF, on X if you want to follow him. Daniel, EJ, and I were talking quite a bit last night about energy and the economy. Everybody was watching the strike on Iran, wondering if oil would surge. And in fact, it didn't. It's only plummeted. In fact, I just saw the stat yesterday, Daniel Turner. $77 a barrel when Trump was inaugurated. I think we're at $64 and something a barrel this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. And it's down around $10 since the American strike on Saturday. And if you looked at any of the Wall Street speculators Sunday going into Monday, they all said brace for $120, brace for $130 a barrel oil. And I'm sure a lot of people went out and bought oil futures because historically that has been the narrative, right? Tensions in the Straits of Hormuz, something we've heard our entire life, always sends oil prices skyrocketing. And yet the exact opposite happened here. And the reason why is because built into oil prices is the future. It's part of this invisible hand Adam Smith talked about, these forces at work that are not centrally planned, that are unseen. And these forces at work look at America's energy industry and they say, we have a lot of optimism in the future. There's permitting, there's drilling, there's financing allowed to happen again. Remember, Biden punished financing to the fossil fuel industry. So they look at the future and they say, we have a lot to be optimistic about. So yeah, Iran, that's bad. Tensions in the Straits of Hormuz, that's bad. But we're not nervous. And prices were steady and they even dropped. And that's because there's an energy policy in place that is bright and optimistic, and OPEC in the Middle East can't change that course anymore.
Trump did say after these strikes, not long after these strikes, and our Energy Secretary Wright responded, affirmative, sir, we'll get on it. He said, drill, baby, drill. It's our responsibility to start making energy as fast as we can. Now, I don't know if he was preemptively addressing that on concern that maybe the oil markets would react violently. They didn't, of course. But what is the state of oil production, to your point? I heard someone say, Daniel, that now the vast majority of the oil we import is not, in fact, coming from places like Iran anyway, and that's also why it didn't have a profound impact. Is that true or false?
We have stopped importing oil from Iran when President Trump was inaugurated. Joe Biden was importing around 150,000 barrels a day. The state of our drilling is difficult in a 30-second soundbite because the oil we bring to market right now, right, the oil that's coming out of the ground was drilled on average 5 or 6 years ago. That's how long it takes. So when Trump, years.
Let that settle in. So when we talk about barrels of oil, we're talking about oil that was produced and sent to market 5 years ago.
Yeah. So when you get permitting, right, from the government has a land lease sale, something the Biden administration stopped for years on end until they were sued by Doug Burgum, actually the governor of North Dakota at the time, sued the Biden administration to say the law says you have to lease land, you have to open up land leases. But that lawsuit dragged for years. And then he finally won. So when you get that land, just to move the equipment and personnel to start drilling is months and a year. And then every well you drill doesn't necessarily produce oil. You have a lot of flubs, right? Like any industry. And so by the time you actually find the right location to drill and you tap and you bring it to surface and you transport it, it is years. So when Trump says drill, baby, drill, I know what he's saying, but what he means is we have to act right now, because if we don't, the future is going to be further and further away. That's what the damage that Joe Biden did by punishing leasing and land leases and access and financing, is that he choked the future. And that was reflected in prices. We're producing roughly the same oil that we did under Joe Biden, but we're producing it almost $30 a barrel less. And that difference, that delta, is because of the future.
Talk to me about Russia for a minute. We know about this China-Russia soft alliance. I'm sure China is all too happy to start purchasing again, and maybe ramping up their purchase of petroleum from Iran. So there is a buyer out there for our enemy's oil, right? And it's China.
Yeah, China, their biggest vulnerability in terms of energy is that they don't have a domestic supply of oil. It's why they are building these pipelines to Pakistan. Explains a lot of the India-Pakistan tension, actually. China is desperate for oil. They have to import 15 or so million barrels a day. 90% of Iran's oil went to China. They also obviously buy Russian oil. The easiest way to choke China is what we were seeing with what's going on in Iran. If you can choke off their oil imports, you're crushing their economy. That's why China also, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but that's why they push electric vehicles on their citizens for two reasons. One, electric vehicles need electricity, and China has a boatload of coal. That's why they're building coal power plants every day. Because they don't have an oil supply. So they're doing it not because of the climate. They're doing it because they don't have oil. And secondly, they like to use their credit scores because maybe your electric vehicle doesn't turn on today, right? They centrally plan their electric vehicles so that they know where you're going and they can track you. And maybe if there's a rally happening and they don't want people to go, everyone's car shuts off. So China uses electric vehicles not because of climate change, as John Kerry would say, or because they love the earth. They're doing it because they don't have oil, and they're doing it because they want to control their people. Reason enough to not necessarily jump on the EV bandwagon as far as I'm concerned.
Amen. Daniel Turner with us, founder and executive director of Power the Future. EJ and I were talking at our live event last night about the electric needs of the future. The role of AI and automation in the United States is only growing. And the thing you and I have talked about before, and we know, tech companies are onlining or asking to online or beginning to build, permit, and talk about building their own nuclear facilities for their power needs. Bottom line, to your point, we're not going to be relying on wind and solar when we need more power than ever before, Daniel. You can't do it without at least nuclear power, if not coal and oil and gas.
Well, Microsoft led this trend when they got permit from Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania to retrofit Reactor 2 of 3 Mile Island. And they did it for their AI data center that they're building nearby. I understand the need for baseload power. I just wish Americans had the same access to baseload power. But it's funny, when Microsoft, when it comes to their profits, right, because AI is profit, it's money, it's a business. When it comes to that, they're like, yeah, we don't want wind and solar, right? Well, because people want to use AI at nighttime and it's dark and there's no solar. And what if there's no wind, right? No one's going to stop using the internet. So they don't want intermittent power. They want reliable baseload power, which is coal, nuclear, natural gas, hydro, etc. But only the American people get stuck with this crappy intermittent wind and solar. And that's why prices are through the roof. New York, where I'm from, in Queens yesterday, a lot of people lost power. A lot of people in Jersey lost power yesterday.
Brownouts,
it was
right?
Hot.
With the heat, yeah.
Absolutely. You know, that happens. It's been hot. You know, I'm 50. It's been hot, and I grew up in New York City. It's been hot a lot in New York City in late June, right? It does happen. But these brownouts are more and more common because we are using a form of electricity that is unreliable. And one of the weird things about wind is that normally the hotter it is, the less the wind blows. So when you have these huge heat waves, wind is absolutely useless. So, and then you go to nighttime and then the solar is turned off because it's dark and the batteries haven't charged because there was no wind. What the hell are we doing, right? Why are we punishing the American people? We're taking steps backwards in the name of climate, and it's just absurd.
And it's suicide, you're right. And the big, beautiful bill has a lot of rescissions in it about all this green tax credit garbage, which, interestingly, the Senate parliamentarian is trying to force a 60-vote threshold, the Byrd rule on it. So she's a partisan hack who can be replaced, by the way. But do you think this big, beautiful bill with about 30 seconds, Daniel, do you think it had some key provisions in it on this green energy garbage? Or do you know much about it?
I have an op-ed just today in Town Hall, if I can give myself a shout out, exactly on this. The Senate Republicans put the green tax credits back in because Biden knew that every politician like a heroin addict, is addicted to federal dollars. And so he pumped federal dollars into red states, and now they need their next hit. And so it's Republicans fighting for free tax dollars. And you know what? If we're going to talk about smaller government and limited government and free markets, you got to start living those damn principles. Get rid of the tax credits for a failed industry.
Daniel Turner's at Town Hall today, and Daniel Turner's at Power of the Future. Daniel Turner PTF on X. Thank you, Daniel. Back in a minute. The guy nobody wanted to hear from, Horseface, the, as Rush used to call him, haughty John Kerry on CNN. The guy you didn't know we needed to hear from in the midst of the campaign against Iran. 2639. He's back, and he says, it really was hardly worth doing because they're just going to keep at it.
I do think people have to be realistic here in understanding what the choices are. Iran is a proud nation. One of the things I learned in my negotiations was the level of pride was just enormous. They also have been committed to the destruction of Israel. That's a cultural, almost religious component of their policy. And so it's very hard to say what exactly is going to bring them back to the table. But I know this. You cannot bomb away the memory of how to make a bomb. You can't bomb away the knowledge that they have developed. You can't bomb away the broad array of technicians who've been working on this for years, who will go back to work if that's the mission they're given by.
So, yeah, that's, it's, of course, in one sense, he's right, but it's really an interesting argument. And you understand now what's driven our foreign policy for so many years. That's the former Secretary of State whose official take is, well, they're a maniacal theocracy. They hate Israel, and they hate the Jews, and they hate us. And yeah, they have nuclear capabilities, and they want to develop a nuke to take us all out. But that isn't going to stop just because we bomb them. So why bother? Is that your official smart State Department takeaway? Why bother? I mean, they're just haters and bigots who want to destroy the West, and now they know how to develop nuclear weapons, so why bother? I don't know. Why have a police department, John? Why bother? Why go get a 6-month dental checkup, John? Why have dental cleanings regularly, John? Why not drink every day of my life like I used to, John? I mean, Stigall, you like bourbon. You're kind of hooked on it. It kind of has become addictive. It's not like if you stop drinking it, you're going to lose your addiction to it, so have at it. Bottoms up. That's the official diagnosis from Dr. Kerry. Wow, now you understand where we are. Over at CNN, Aaron Burnett wants you to know that death to America sometimes can be sweet. In 2649, it's friendly, actually. If you listen closely, death to America can sound kind of nice.
But the question is whether or not the calm can remain when the regime that is still there, who wants death to America, death to Israel, stays in place. And that is part of the discussion, right?
Yes, absolutely part of the discussion. And, I remember, Dan, at one point being in Tehran years ago, and they're chanting death to America all around me, even as I say, oh, I'm an American reporting for CNN, and they were happy to speak to me. So that those two sort of jarring realities of the chant and yet the friendliness have existed together.
Huh? The friendly chants of death to America? I don't remember that in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Hello, neighbor. Can you say death to the West? I don't. Mr. McFeely, did he come in and death to the Jews? Now, let's go to Make-Believe Land, or whatever the hell they called it, with the puppets. Weird. These people, this is what's driven foreign policy in this country. These brilliant takes of, well, I mean, Kerry says they hate the West, but who are we to try to stop them? They know how to develop nukes. Don't bother. Aaron Burnett says, actually, it's kind of friendly. It's got kind of a nice friendly ring to it if you listen close. It's such a joke, and everybody sees it, and aren't we glad that in 2025, We have platforms like X. We have platforms like this show, the Salem News Channel, great Salem radio stations all over the country so that you know this garbage is not the prevailing view of the United States. Normal Americans know better. Glad you're here. We'll be back in a minute. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Hey there, it's Chris from my good friends at Texas Bullion Exchange, the good people that tell you there is no reason to live with all of this angst and anxiety about the markets going up and the markets going down. Why don't you just do something that has helped people calm their nerves in volatile markets for years? Texas Bullion Exchange, real physical gold as part of your savings. That's what they do. It's not about getting rich quick, mind you. It's about helping protect what you've already earned. And if you join Texas Bullion Exchange's Principal Protection Program, you're going to get 3% bonus in silver on your entire gold portfolio. Now, this program protects the value of what you've earned. So when you put it into gold and then it's time to sell, you get back what you paid. Never less. In fact, usually it's more, but it's never less. And isn't that reassuring? This program protects the value of your gold. Take the pressure off. You and your loved ones can face the future with confidence when you put gold in your savings and claim your 3% in bonus silver when you do it. 855-839-2728 is their number. 855-837-2728. Or visit buytexasgold.com. Again, 855-839-2728 or buytexasgold.com. It's Texas Bullion Exchange. Experience, integrity, and value. Glad to have you along, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to this midweek edition of the Stigall Show as we look at Saranac Lake in New York. Beautiful shot this morning. Thanks for watching on the Salem News Channel and listening on great radio stations throughout New York. Even you lunatics in New York City who just voted for that maniac. Good grief. Is it any wonder that school choice has grown bigger in New York than anywhere else? Wow. They just elected this guy. I mean, you should see, if you're not on X, by the way, follow on X and all social media, the Harumph Society, my 3 times a week newsletter. You can go to chrisstigall.com. I'm linked to all of that, and I hope that you will. X is exploding right now with this lunatic who's likely to become the next mayor of New York. People just ultimately believe that the guy is going to drive the population and most business right out, those that haven't already left. There will be plenty more to talk about with him. Also, interestingly, going on right now as we speak, the big NATO summit, Trump, Marco Rubio, some others are there, and they are fired up and popping off about this leaked damage assessment after the strike over the weekend that they say has annihilated their nuclear capabilities, or at least set them back by months. CNN and others are reporting, it really didn't do much at all. And you can tell, I mean, they're mad. Witkoff was out last night, the envoy to the Middle East, saying on cable, he said, that's a bunch of bunk. I've seen it all. It's not true. Pete Hegseth said, I've seen it all. We devastated them. Marco Rubio ferociously thundering this morning saying, that's garbage. We did our job. They're set back a lot. So the White House pushing back strongly against any reports that suggest this was anything less than a total success and total devastation for Iran's nuclear capabilities. So we'll watch that back and forth. The president is supposed to speak, we think, maybe within this hour. If he does, we will certainly carry it live here. Meanwhile, I was just mentioning a minute ago, if business is fleeing and running from New York, they're also fleeing and running from the schools in New York. We know that. Brian Jodis knows it, too. He's the National Press Secretary at the American Federation for Children. Brian, I welcome you back.
there's some things to talk about with the big, beautiful bill, but I would mention, again, we've talked about this before, people are surprised to learn this. The biggest growth in homeschooling is in New York. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. And Chris, looking great, man. Congratulations on the journey and keep up the good work.
Thank you,
it
brother.
really is incredible. I mean, you look in these places, sort of these liberal bastions like Chicago, New York City, Baltimore, and you see the way in which the schools are just wildly underperforming. And they'll tend to say, we don't have the resources to get it done. Meanwhile, budgets only continue to balloon. And to your point, families are demanding, we need more. We need more accountability in this education system. And so homeschool on the rise, private school choice programs on the rise. And it's all because parents, families, like we've said before, they want to be empowered with what's best for their kids. And they look around at this system that continues to grow and pushes them to the back burner, continues to balloon these budgets, yet our kids can't read and write, specifically in these major metropolitan areas. Something's got to change.
This is a huge passion of mine. I know it is yours. It's literally the work you do every single day, but it's something my wife and I over the last 3 years. COVID is really what, for us, jump-started our interest and conversation in school choice. Specifically, we do some work with something called the Herzog Foundation. For people that don't know it, I hope you'll seek it out, because it is a completely not-for-profit organization that helps guide people to grow and catalyze Christian school growth all over the country. If you're a Christian school and you'd like some more resources and help, I'll just pitch it again. It's herzogfoundation.com. I hope you'll check it out. I know you guys know it at the American Federation for Children. The reason I bring all that up is I know you do, we do, advocate for school choice. Universal school choice would be ideal. That is not the case for a lot of states right now. But in this big, beautiful bill that could be passing very, very soon with the president's signature, what do we know is in this that could mean meaningful school choice for everybody, no matter where they're listening and watching?
Yeah, great question. And it really does align with the president's vision for education in America. And it aligns with what American families want. They want access to the schools that will best meet their kids' needs. And they want their tax dollars to follow their kids to those schools. You know, the president has campaigned on this, saying he believes and wants to fight for universal school choice. I think, Chris, we've seen over the last, 200 days here, what the president campaigns on, he intends to make good on. And so the House took the very first steps to get universal school choice into the one big, beautiful bill. The Senate has then made really critical and important updates to that. And now we're going through the process of ensuring that those things can continue to move forward and get to the president's desk. I think the Senate and the House are aligned on wanting to get this one big, beautiful bill done. But what it will do is amend the tax code. It'll allow SGOs to stand up in states. Folks will be able to donate to those scholarship granting organizations. And then, yes, families and students will be empowered in those states to be able to get access to school choice dollars to go with them to the school that will best meet their needs. And this is another big blow to the big schooling unions, to the teachers union. It's the reason why they're fighting it so much, because it takes power away from those unions and to put it back in the hands where it belongs, right? With parents and families. I know that's what we believe so much in together. And so we're at a great point here. This thing continues to move forward. We, like so many other parts of the one big, beautiful bill, are going through the process of getting to the finish line, but we feel very confident we're going to get there because, again, the vast majorities of Americans want this. The president wants to see it get it done. House and Senate are united on it, and so we're excited to see this thing get done and get school choice to all 50 states in America.
We're going to talk with Senator Tommy Tubberville shortly, we think, assuming everything goes according to plan. And there's some parliamentary stuff, some trickery going on with a Democrat who runs the parliamentary procedure in the Senate. I don't know that school choice in this particular provision is a problem, but she is trying to stymie a lot of facets of this bill from going forward. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Republicans navigate it. But I never like to get too down in the weeds on this with people, but because I don't want to bore folks. Brian Jodis with us with the American Federation for Children. The educational savings accounts are sometimes what they're called. Sometimes scholarship funds are what they're known as. But overwhelmingly, I guess the simplest way to put this is we would like to see everybody get to a place where the money they spend on private education for their kids is a deductible expense, perhaps, or for people that can't afford it, they have access to tax dollars for scholarship opportunities. Is that the easiest way to explain this to people?
Yeah, you're tracking, and there's multiple vehicles in way in which this can work. And it's kind of sort of beauty in the way in which this has worked across the country. by sending education back to the states, by creating, school choice programs in states, they've been able to decide what the best vehicles are. So those education savings accounts you talk about, where families got some spending flexibility, what to do with those dollars. States like where I live in North Carolina, where it's more of a sort of traditional voucher program, the dollars then go in the student's name to the school of their choice. And that's the beauty in the way in which school choice works. The key to it is really empowering families with those tax dollars, their dollars to go with them, with their child to that school. The way this program will work is through these SGOs, families will then be able to then get those dollars and they'll in sort of voucher style go to the school in their kid's name. But then again, the vehicle is important, but it's not as important as empowering those dollars, freeing them up to be able to go with the families. The beauty of what's being proposed on the national level is it's just a simple but brilliant amend to the tax code that then allows this all to happen, and we can see school choice get supercharged. And there's reasons why it has to happen. I want to give you a great example because I know you'll like this one. You've got Philadelphia roots. We were just in Philadelphia about 2 weeks ago for a family reunion. Had a great time. 40 family members at a Phillies game. Had a great time.
Nice.
But check this out, Chris, because this is what really drives the point home why we need this. Father Judge High School in Philadelphia, all boys school, really focused on trades, vocations, getting these young men directly into the workforce. At many times earning really good careers, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. Father Judge spends about $9,700 a kid to go to school there. Philadelphia Public Schools spends over double that, $20,000 a kid, yet only 15% of eighth graders in Philly are proficient in math. So you look at the dollars and cents of this, and it drives home why it's so critically important to create more school choice across America, supercharge in the states where it exists, get more into the states where it doesn't. It's always good for our parents and our kids.
And again, it's not, I want to keep stressing this to people. Like in Missouri, for instance, I'll explain it this way. I have a tax liability, as we all do in most states. You pay, well, not every state, but so you pay taxes to Missouri. The state of Missouri allows you to spend 50% of the tax you owe to the state. You can put it into what's called an educational, or I should say, a scholarship fund, an education scholarship fund. So, if you got to pay taxes to Missouri, I can pay 50% of it to a scholarship fund, so kids can access those funds to go to a private school or access it for school choice. So it's giving voters and taxpayers the option to help fund it too, if pure school choice doesn't exist.
Kind of a beautiful way to do it, right? It's a beautiful way to do it. And so what's crazy is too, our opponents will say you're going to be siphoning all this money away from traditional public schools. These are public dollars which should be going to public schools. Well, that's not true. We're talking about creating a program here where individuals and corporations can donate their dollars to these SGOs, get a tax incentive to do it. That's great. And at the same time, then empower families with funds to be able to go with them to the school of their choice. I mean, it's such a beautiful model.
But Brian, wouldn't the best straight up, I mean, in an ideal utopia, perfect world, the best way is if I spend $12,000, $15,000 a year on a private school for my child, I could write that off come tax time. Wouldn't that be the best, purest, ideal way?
Yeah, and that's where states have to make the decisions. Look, ideally, I'd say, states have the resources to educate every single kid in their state, right? They have state dollars to be able to do that. Put those dollars, like in North Carolina, kids get about $8,000 on their name from the state. Then they get federal and local funding. Let that $8 go with them wherever they want.
Amen.
And if they choose
Brian.
to go to a private school of their choice, maybe they've got to make up the difference, but let it follow the kids.
This is going to win. It's just going to win. The will of the people want it. Brian, thank you so much. Brian Jodis, American Federation for Children. Back in a minute. Is this right? Of course, I don't have time, nor would I pay attention to it even if I did. Bernie Sanders went on the Joe Rogan podcast, Fast Eddie. Is that true?
That's true, man. Yes, it is.
How did that go for, is Joe feeling the burn? Or is everybody just aware that if you want to go be kinged, you got to go to the guy that's got the biggest podcast audience in the country?
It's a little bit of both, because remember, Joe Rogan did feel the burn back in 2016.
Did. So you think Bernie felt like he had an ally here?
I do, yeah.
Now, what is the overall view? That it went well for him? Because, I mean, obviously the clip I have in front of me doesn't suggest it did, but, how did Joe treat him? Have you read or heard?
Yeah, I watched most of the interview. It didn't go too well for Bernie. He's slipping.
But do you think Trump is, or I should say Joe Rogan, do you think he's like a Trumpist? I don't feel like just because he voted Trump and advocated for Trump, like he's all in on Trump today necessarily. And Lord knows this week has shown a lot of people who voted for Trump aren't necessarily pro-Trump today. Where has Joe Rogan shown himself? Because I don't pay attention. No disrespect to Rogan. I don't have time to listen. Do you know?
I thought Joe Rogan did have a problem with, you know what? Joe Rogan said something recently, either this week or last, about the ICE raids, because some of the footage and stuff is looking pretty serious. I think he took issue with the ICE raids going on.
Which, amazingly, Charlemagne T.H.A. God, on the other hand, this is the guy that speaks for all of black America, we're told. He says he doesn't have the least bit of problem with the ICE raids. He doesn't have the least bit of problem with it. In fact, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's go to Field of the Burn on the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe calls him out on this. And Bernie keeps sticking his foot in this trap. He did this with the RFK Jr. hearings for HHS when they started going 10 rounds about donors and big pharma money. And RFK Jr. said, you took more big pharma money than anybody. Rogan similarly calling him out here. 2642. Take a listen.
What it says is you're a billionaire. You have now the constitutional right, because your money is your freedom of expression, right? So you don't like Bernie Sanders? You can put millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign and express your view about how terrible Bernie Sanders is,
right.
And you can buy that election, right? That's your
Right.
constitutional right. I think that's probably the worst decision that the Supreme Court has ever made. So what is the result of that decision? The result of that decision, let's take us to where we are today, is that Elon Musk, and I know Elon was on your show, and he's here in Austin, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And we could talk about Elon, but he spent $270 million to elect Trump as president. Okay. I think that's absurd that any one person...
What's the most someone donated towards the Harris campaign?
They spent a lot of money on Harris as well.
They spent $1.5 billion just
Combined.
over the course of a couple of months.
You got it. All right, let me talk about it. So
Yeah,
I'm not here
let's
just to
talk
say
about
it's a
that.
Republican. That's my point here.
Right.
Okay.
No, it's not your point. You tried. You just got boxed out by your bro there, Bernie. By the way, does he do his level best to screw up his hair just to look insane? Like, does he? Like, I don't. Does he have a staff that like rubs the sides of his heads to make him look extra lunatic before he goes on public events? He looks like Doc Brown without hair on top. Anyway, that's yeah. Okay, so that went about as well as you could expect. Quick break. Back in a flash with Senator Tubberville of Alabama in a minute. It is a thrill to welcome, for now, the senator from Alabama, who I believe will be likely the next governor of Alabama. He's just recently announced he's going to leave the Senate to run to be the next governor of Alabama. Coach Tommy Tubberville. It is great to have you, sir. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
Senator, I'm doing great. Thank you. And first of all, congratulations on your announcement to run. I am just curious, just as a personal note, what made you decide to run for governor and leave the United States Senate?
Well, you know, I've been up here going on 5 years. We'll have 6. I got another year and a half here, and we can do a lot of good. The thing about it is President Trump is sending more power and money back to the states. And, you know, I think I can do more good there. I'm a builder. That's what I did coaching. I put together football teams and built them and understand the hard work and effort that you need. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a different show. Up here, it's you're one of 100. When you're governor, you're number one, and you get the credit and the blame, just like a football coach. And so I'm looking forward to it. But we got a lot of work to do up here. This is a god awful mess, and as you just saw, you know, New York is just going deeper in the hole, electing a socialist communist mayor. You know, they're taking over, and it's slowly happening. But hopefully, we'll fight back.
Are we seeing, Stephen Miller pointed this out on X, and I share this point of view. I don't know if you do or not. I don't want to put words in your mouth. New York City allows illegals to vote. Yeah. We know Democrats allow illegals to pour into the country. Is that ultimately the recipe to land where we've landed in New York City this morning?
No, that's what they're trying to do everywhere, trying to get illegals to vote. That's the reason they had open borders. You know, that was a plan of the deep state behind Joe Biden, who had no clue what was going on. It was all a plan from Obama to people that have a huge plan that want to take our country over. And as I tell my people in Alabama and everywhere I speak across the country, we better wake up, because we're going to wake up one day going, what have we done? We've lost all sense of reality, and we don't have the country that we grew up in. We're just scratching to make 250 years next year on July the 4th of the greatest country ever. But you know, if we continue down this path, even in my lifetime, which I'm in the fourth quarter, we're going to have a tough time recognizing the United States of America. So, folks, wake up and smell the roses.
Alabama Senator Tommy Tubberville with us. So much going on. Let me ask you, I know you're on the Senate Armed Services Committee. What did you know about the strike on Iran or in your reaction to it since?
Yeah, they've been planning this for years, not just the last 4 or 5 months. I've talked to the leaders in the military that's had a lot of power over the years, and they practice this quite often with these B-2s, and so it went well. But we had to have a guy like President Trump that would actually do it. We didn't get the same thing out of the Clintons or the Bushes or the Obamas or the Bidens. They didn't have the guts to do this, to stop this nonsense of a nuclear weapon. Now, we don't know yet how much damage they did. Of course, President Trump said they obliterated Iran, but we'll have to wait and see the results.
Do you have any doubt on that, Senator? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you have any doubt on that? Because I know CNN ran with some report. This Marco Rubio this morning, as well as Pete Hegseth and President Trump, Caroline Leavitt, they're vociferously denying these reports that it wasn't an effective strike. Do you know anything one way or the other?
No, but we're having a hearing tomorrow. All the senators, we get to ask these same questions. Now, if the equipment and the enriched uranium where they hit, it's no more. I mean, they'll never be able to use it. Was it still there? That's what we need to find out. The mission went perfect. They put a bunch of bombs in the circle of a bathtub. These military folks did a great job, but again, do we know that all of that was there? We'll have to wait and find out.
Okay, now on to the big, beautiful bill. I hear yesterday there's a woman who's called the Senate parliamentarian, appointed by Harry Reid, who pops up out of nowhere and says there's a lot of this stuff in the bill you can't vote on without 60 votes because of the Byrd rule. I don't want to bore everybody with procedure, but bottom line, can something be done about this? As I read it, Senator Thune and even Vice President Vance could fire this person and appoint somebody new today if they wanted to. What do you know about that?
100%. I don't know why we kept her around. She's been here, and she made some good decisions back during the Biden administration. She looked like she was nonpartisan, but I think that a position like that should be controlled and maintained by the majority. And when we came into the majority back in January, I think that possibly there should have been something happening in that area. I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody, but this is politics, and this is a situation where you've had somebody there since Harry Reid. Come on, I mean almost longer than Nancy Pelosi, if you can believe that. So it's just one of those situations that sometimes you look at it and wonder, how did we not make that decision? But
well,
again,
that is a
not
wonderful
my decision.
question. Is she gutting this bill? Is Senator Thune acquiescing to her, or are we going to do something about it? What do you know?
Well, we went through all of the Byrd rule decisions yesterday, and I would say we probably got 80% of what we wanted. Now, you'd like to have 100%. Everybody would. There's some things in there you question that why would they disallow that and not disallow this other one? To me, I always look at consistency. Just be consistent with it, and I don't think there was as much consistency here as we should have had. But at the end of the day, the bill is pretty much still intact. There's, of course, a lot of complaining on both sides of the aisle, and especially here in the Senate. And when we send it back to the House, there will probably be a lot more.
Senator Tommy Tubberville, is it a better bill, do you think, than you found it from the House? Is it more conservative? And what would the House do you anticipate House Republicans? They only passed it by a vote as it was. So where does it stand right now?
Well, I think that their bill cut $1.4 trillion in 10 years. We're cutting 1.7. Now, we should be cutting another $500-600 billion, but it's hard to get that done. When you have so many people that have a hand in it, it's just hard to get anything done here. This place runs in slow motion. I'm like Senator Ron Johnson. We should have forgot the whole deal, and we should have done a reconciliation. As soon as President Trump got in and say, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the 2019 budget of President Trump before COVID. COVID actually killed the taxpayers in this country, literally and physically. We lost a lot of people. Plus, we spent $4, $5, $6 trillion we shouldn't have, and it put us in such a hole. And what they did is the Democrats added to every agency, and we should have gone back and just with population growth and inflation added a little bit more, but gone back to that budget and started over again with no COVID. There's nothing out there. But I tell you, it's hard to cut anything. It's hard to cut a toothbrush up here in this atmosphere.
So what you're talking about is the baseline. Basically, COVID and all this excessive spending has now become the new normal baseline instead of going back to pre-COVID spending. Is that about right?
100%. And again, we don't need that. I mean, it's just we were a ship without a rudder. They were just throwing money at everything. There was money being stolen. If people across the country knew what happened the last 4 years, actually knew the truth that most of us up here know, we've seen, we knew it was happening, we just couldn't prove it. Now they're starting to prove everything going on. There'd be a revolution. There would be people in the streets going, we're not paying any more taxes if that's how you're going to handle our money.
Which brings me to Doge. I know you're part of the Senate Doge caucus and what Elon found. Rescissions coming? Do you think there's more to talk about, or is Doge off the table now that Elon's gone?
Well, the biggest thing is the fraud. It's not the money. It's where the money went. There were people taking money, and there was people getting 4 or 5 Social Security checks. People have been dead for 100 years. It's crazy. You should see the results, but you can't get people up here to stand up against it, Republicans and Democrats. So at the end of the day, Elon Musk and his group are still doing a great job. They're finding the waste. Everybody said, "Well, you're cutting Medicaid." No, we're not cutting anything. We're cutting the people out that are not supposed to get it. We're saving the money for the people that have actually paid into it for many, many years. And if we don't do that, then they're not going. In about 5 years, we're going to be broke. Social Security and Medicare is going to be broke.
Jerome Powell testified on Capitol Hill yesterday. He will not move off this interest rate. What do you make of his testimony?
Well, I've got a little website that says FJP, fire Jerome Powell.
I thought fire is the F. Okay, never mind. I thought it was something else.
No, well, it catches everybody's eye, but I know him, and I first met him when I first got here 5 years ago, and I asked him, why didn't you raise interest rates? Interest rates were low so long, and it put us in a bind. And finally, when Biden went in, he raised the rates to a certain point. But now that inflation's down, we got to go down. We're killing the housing market. Here's what's happening. Nobody wants to sell a 3% loan that they bought 5 or 6 years ago. So they're going to just stay in that house instead of upgrading or moving somewhere else and selling that house. They're keeping it. So there's no housing out there. And he's got to wake up. And somebody asked me what I thought why he's doing it. Well, he says it's because of the tariffs. Wait a minute. You're not in that position to play God, okay? You're not trying to predict the future of what tariffs are going to do. Look at what's happening today. Help the American people today. That's your job. And he's lucky to have that job, and he won't be in there much longer because President Trump's about had it. But, it's just out of control. When he lowered rates right before the election for Kamala Harris and inflation was out the roof, you knew right then this guy's political hack, and he's doing it to save his job. And he should have been gone the first day that President Trump got in. I wish he'd have fired him, but President Trump's trying to do the right thing and just wait him out. But God almighty, he's killing our country.
All right, so we've got a Fed chair and a Senate parliamentarian that we know both need to go. We'll be on that. Let me close with 30 seconds, Senator. The big, beautiful bill. When are you voting on it? When do you think it'll leave the Senate?
We'll vote Friday. And everybody asked me, my wife asked me this morning, is it going to pass? I said it's going to be a photo finish. That's exactly what's going to happen. I'm worried about it. I really am. And I've told President Trump that. We've got people who are very concerned that we're cutting too much or we're not cutting enough. And you have the moderate Republicans that are just, hey, we can't cut this much. And that's ridiculous. But, we just can't get on the same page as Republicans. But we better do something, because if the taxes go up 22%, when we don't pass this bill, heaven forbid what's going to happen. You think that idiot got elected in New York, we'll have a bunch of them get elected.
Senator Tommy Tubberville of Alabama, thanks for your time. The next governor of Alabama. God bless you, sir. Thank you. More in a minute. All right, Trump's over there in NATO today in the Netherlands, and the NATO, the Secretary General has been just effusive in his praise for Donald Trump. Give me 2640 here, Paulie. Here he is. Dear Donald, he calls him.
It will also be a massive achievement in making NATO fairer. For decades, the United States sought to get Europe to truly step up. Now, European allies and Canada will equalize their defense spending with the United States. So let me salute President Trump's long-standing leadership in calling for NATO to increase defense spending. Today, I am pleased to announce that NATO has already added an additional $1 trillion in defense spending over the past decade. Mr. President, dear Donald, that is thanks to you pushing us. And tomorrow we will build on that foundation and add trillions more in defense spending, because we need to do this.
You know, I'm blown away, and I know people sound like I'm just. People will say, "Well, you're just being a kiss up here," and maybe I am. I have nothing to gain by it. Trust me when I tell you, it's not like the White House is. You know, Ed, how do I put this? If people accuse this show of being a Trump sycophant or a Trump apologist or whatever, to what benefit is it for me? Sincerely, am I getting any coin for it?
No.
I mean, you're the executive producer of the show. Is there benefit to being a Trump propagandist in any way?
No, oh, gosh,
for the show?
No.
In fact, if truth be told, if we're to be completely candid, we aren't right now talking a lot to the White House directly. I mean, they're being very, very guarded in their communication. So I feel sometimes like people think this is a little nauseating, Stigall. You're going over the top. Maybe I am. But I can't tell you how special and significant a time in history I think this is. And I would say that whether I ever spoke to President Trump again and had him on the show again, ever went to the White House again or not. This is the most remarkable period that I have lived in American history. I'm confident of it. I've never lived under, I've certainly never had the privilege of voting for an American leader like this one. And in very, very short order, as President Trump has changed the course of history probably in the Middle East, he has changed the course of the economy here domestically, he has sealed the border domestically. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, laid it out beautifully just yesterday, as a matter of fact. Let's play that again in case you missed it. The Bessent clip here, 2643. Bessent said it well, as he always does.
Had a very successful lunch meeting with the senators. I think that we are on track for hopefully for a vote this Friday for July 4th for the tax bill. President is doing peace deals, tax deals, trade deals, so he's done a peace deal. I think we'd have the tax deal done by July 4th, and then we can finish with the trade deals.
It's history. And then you've got the NATO Secretary General saying, "Dear Donald, thank you for kicking our ass. You're right. We have not spent nearly enough money. Gosh, we're embarrassed. Sorry, dear Donald. We're going to come to the table and pay our fair share. Thank you for wrapping our knuckles. Thank you for turning us over your knee and making a global disgrace of us all. We'll do better this time." That's President Trump in 6 months. That's not even to speak of the big, beautiful bill where the power the guy is wielding, emboldened by you because he knows you've got his back. This strike on Iran, CNN laments. The polling says 80% of people who voted for Donald Trump are wholly and totally behind him in striking Iran. He's got all the mojo. And everywhere he turns, he's snapping his fingers and people are jumping. Iran, NATO, Israel, Senate Republicans, House Republicans, do it, do it, do it. He's the magic man. I don't know that we're ever going to see a human being in the White House in my lifetime that has amassed this kind of credibility and authority on behalf of the American people. Not a dictator. Truly, in a representative republic, a man who is truly representing you to make the country great again. I believe in this guy. I trust him implicitly. It is a hell of a lot of fun to watch. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow here on The Stigall Show.
So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through.
You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.